Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Have you ever heard someone say, "Ugh, I just hate NFP because I only ever want sex during my fertile window and we're avoiding pregnancy"? Maybe you've said it yourself. I'm pretty sure I see this pop up about once a week in the NFP Facebook groups. But it is actually not true at all. That is not a true statement. And I'm going to tell you why that is and how to actually improve your desire in this week's episode. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, the sex and intimacy podcast for Catholic women. My name is Ellen Holloway, and I am a Catholic speaker and coach who specializes in sex and marital intimacy. And I am on a mission to help you actually enjoy and desire good, holy sex with your spouse. So, your hormones. I can guarantee that your cycling hormones are not to blame for a lack of desire in sex. So, let's talk about what is a hormone. A hormone is a chemical messenger that tells tissue in your body to do a certain thing. All right? So let's look at your fertility cycle and the main hormones that we have at play in your fertility cycle. We have estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen is a big player at the beginning, half roughly of your cycle. As estrogen rises, we're getting closer to ovulation. And then after ovulation, estrogen drops drastically and progesterone becomes the primary hormone at play. So what estrogen is doing here is preparing the body for ovulation. It is telling the cervical crypts to create cervical mucus. It's lubricating the vagina. But what else does estrogen do? So we just said that it stimulates follicles to release an egg. It helps the vagina stay lubricated and clean. It helps the fallopian tubes transport the egg with small contractions. Estrogen also creates contractions during the delivery of a baby. Estrogen helps to move sperm to the egg by maintaining the health of the cervix and telling those cervical crypts to create that good cervical mucus. And estrogen also stops the flow of milk when a woman is no longer breastfeeding. That's why her cycling returns. And that estrogen is going to help that stopping of the flow. So those are all things that estrogen does. Did I mention increased libido or increased desire for sex? I did not. That hormone is testosterone. None of what estrogen does actually has anything to do with desire for sex. Testosterone is the hormone that has to do with sexual desire. So when you say, "Oh my gosh, my estrogen is so high, I only ever want sex when my estrogen is high," that's not why you only want sex during your fertile window. Estrogen is an upper. Progesterone is a downer. So estrogen is going to boost our energy. It's going to just make us feel more feminine, more lively. It's bringing us just right up to ovulation, which is just a beautiful gift of our femininity, is the ability to ovulate. So it gives us a lot more energy. Progesterone doesn't give us energy. It actually takes away a lot of our energy. It uses a lot of energy because the body is now preparing for the possibility of a pregnancy. That's what progesterone is doing. And so, the body kind of goes a bit into hibernation to start preparing for that and storing up some energy, building up that endometrial layer, that kind of thing. So estrogen allows us to have room for the desire for sex. See, desire for sex is not a survival instinct for women. It is for men. Let me explain why. Okay, so look at a man's body. We'll go from the men's side first, and then we'll talk about the women's side. A man's body, when he has sex, his body, after having sex, if he has helped in the creation of a new life, his body is now out of the picture. There's no need for his body anymore. On the flip side, The woman, if she also participates in the creation of a new life, her body now has a lot to do for the next 18 years, not just the next 9 months, but the next several years. So if we are in survival mode, if we just think back like, hunter-gatherer society, if it's like, oh my gosh, I am going to die, the men are going to want to have sex because the men want progeny. They want the human species to continue. Women are not going to want to have sex because they want to survive. And being pregnant in an area of danger, not going to be very helpful for surviving. Being pregnant requires safety. It requires security. It requires, having that security of like a husband, right? If you think your husband is going to die, you also might not want to have sex because like you won't have the protection of your husband. And again, I'm going back to kind of that hunter-gatherer thing, but we can take a lot of this into our own lives. Before we get to the rest of the episode, I have a question for you. Is sexual pleasure something that seems just out of grasp? Or maybe something you've never or rarely actually experienced? Sexual pleasure, and orgasm in particular, is something that a lot of Catholic women struggle with. Whether it's because of a misunderstanding of the point of sexual pleasure and God's design for it, or a lifetime of suppressing anything to do with sex because it was bad or dirty, maybe shame from past sexual experiences, or maybe just that no one ever stopped to walk you through an in-depth anatomical diagram and tell you about how female pleasure works. Whatever it is, orgasm is a confusing jumble of anatomy, mindset, partner dynamics, and a lot more. And it's not something that you want to Google because you never know what you're going to come across on the internet, and sifting through secular crap is just not something you have time for. That is why I created the Orgasm course for Catholic women. This course walks you through everything from anatomy to mindset to theology to the partner aspect of sex and orgasm, and it is all deeply rooted in Catholic truth. There is nowhere else that you can get all the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. Check out the Orgasm course for Catholic women at vibesandfullbloom.com/orgasm or click the link in the show notes. We live physically very safe lives overall, not like our hunter-gatherer ancestors. But we also live very stressful lives. We are constantly in a state of survival mode, simply just because of the way that our society talks about things and does things and the pace of life, the amount of things that we have on our calendar. We're stressed, we're anxious, and we're tired. And all of those three things, those put us into survival mode. And so when you don't have enough energy, you're not going to want to have sex as a woman, generally speaking. As a man, what I said about being in survival mode, not just the women in our society are in survival mode, the men are as well. And so this is just my own personal theory, but I think a lot of the disparity of desire for sex that we have actually has to do with this whole survival mode issue. But that's for another topic. So we only physically desire sex when we have the capacity to physically desire sex. We only physically desire sex when we have enough energy to feel that we can safely bring a child to term. And estrogen is almost kind of a Band-Aid on the problem because it sort of tricks us into thinking we have more energy. Estrogen doesn't actually technically give us more energy. The things that give us energy, chemical energy, are food and rest. So ultimately, physical desire for sex is about energy conservation. We have to get ourselves out of survival mode in order to desire sex in a healthy way, because it's actually incredibly unhealthy if you are only desiring sex during your fertile window because estrogen is tricking you into thinking you have enough energy. And so if your desire for sex plummets the moment that you have confirmed ovulation, that is a huge red flag that there is something wrong, that you are not getting enough energy. So there are two things I want you to focus on. If you want to have more desire for sex, you have to focus on these two things. And I'm going to tell them, and you are going to roll your eyes at me. But here's the thing. I can guarantee you that if you make major changes in these two places in your life, you will have more desire for sex. But they have to be positive and substantial changes. The first one is sleep, and the second one is eating enough and eating well. Okay? You need 8 hours of sleep. Actually, as a woman, you need 8 to 9 hours of sleep. So you should actually, as a woman, be aiming for 9 hours, not be aiming for 8. Because if you aim for 9 and get a little bit less than that, you're still in a good range. And you're like, Ellen, I can't get 9 hours of sleep. That's ridiculous. I have kids at home. I have this to do. I have that to do. There's so many chores. I have to clean up after the kids go to bed and all this kind of stuff. Okay, look, I said what I said. If you want more desire for sex, if you want more capacity to house that desire for sex, you have to get yourself out of survival mode. And the first way to do that is to make sure you are getting enough sleep. And look, you tell your husband this, and I have a feeling he'll be on board. Just be like, hey, so that Ellen lady I sometimes listen to on the podcast about sex and intimacy? She told me that if I got 9 hours of sleep every day for the next 30 days, I might actually desire sex more spontaneously. And your husband's going to be like, great, what do I need to do to help you get 9 hours of sleep every night? Okay, obviously, your husband's going to be excited about the fact that you have a tangible way to increase your desire for sex. Okay, so getting 9 hours of sleep, what does that actually entail? It means that you need to set aside 10 hours that you're in bed because it takes time to wind down and get ready for bed. Okay, so if you got to work backward, if you wake up at 6 a.m, that means you need to be asleep by 9. That means you need to start bedtime at 8. It does. You got to start brushing your teeth, changing, doing whatever reading you do or whatever at 8 o'clock and start winding yourself down. And yeah, that might cut off any of your normal evening activities. But if you want desire for sex, then you need the sleep. So that's your choice, right? Okay, and then let's talk about the second one that I mentioned, eating enough and eating well. Women, we are so bad at eating enough food. You need so many calories. And there's so many women who are like, oh, I try to eat about 1,400 calories. That is not enough calories for your body to function. If you are eating at a calorie deficit, you're putting your body into survival mode. You are. Now, there are safe and healthy ways to eat at a calorie deficit if you are looking to lose weight. But 1,400 calories is not a safe way to eat at a calorie deficit. Maybe something like 1,800. Or even for some women, depending on your height and your weight, 1,600 might be okay. But that is something that I would really encourage you to talk to a nutritionist about, talk to a health coach, and figure out what your calorie needs are. And then the other thing is that you need to inform yourself about macronutrients. And you need to make sure that you are getting enough protein, fat, and carbs. So many women are just super completely anti-carbs. Carbohydrates are what give you energy. If you are lacking in energy and you are eating a super low carb diet, I'm not surprised that you're lacking in energy. So there's a lot of people out there, there's a great podcast that you could listen to called Healthy Catholic Moms. Brittany Pearson, she's wonderful. She's a fitness and nutrition. Fitness would definitely be like another one in there. Once you've got sleep and eating solidly in there, then working in fitness, that would be a really good thing as well. But you have to inform yourself about these things. And then with the eating, I think especially as like moms, whether you're working or at home, like you're working no matter what, we're really bad at actually remembering to eat sometimes. So that might mean scheduling your meals, meal planning, and not just meal planning dinners, but like meal planning what you're going to eat for breakfast and for lunch, and like what snacks you're going to have on hand for yourself. Like even simple things like just cooking a bunch of chicken at the beginning of the week and just having that available, easy to eat. Having things like Greek yogurt on hand, fresh fruits, like just really solid, nutrient-dense foods to encourage you and your body to actually get the energy that it needs. So in conclusion, it is not your hormones' fault. It's not estrogen and progesterone's fault that you have a lack of sexual desire. It's not your cycle. It is about energy conservation. So I want you to focus on getting good sleep, and I want you to focus on eating well. And if you do those two things consistently for 30 days, for the next month, you will see a radical change in your sex life and your desire for sex, because you're actually giving yourself room to desire sex. You're allowing your body to even have the capacity to desire sex if you're making sure that you're giving your body enough energy through sleep and eating well. Thanks so much for listening. If you are not already following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you listen to podcasts on a platform that gives you the option to rate or review, we'd love for you to do that because it helps us spread the word about the podcast. If you ever have questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to us. We love to hear from you. You can reach out on Instagram or send us an email. Our email is in the show notes. Until next time.